and let as many of you as possible be here, because this is a very serious matter. Indeed, in education, I think you should begin, even as Parliament, begin asking yourselves, those of us who are slightly older, those that are spending time with their grandchildren particularly, you should ask yourselves as a country, how is it that the schools that do best are private schools? How did most of you went through public schools. How is it that we have allowed as a country, allowed ourselves to veer off from what is in the interest of the majority of the country? Public schools. That is where investment should be. It's only that many of you are not, Jimmy Angwenyi is not in the chamber. He would know. I'm sure Honorable Yusuf would perhaps confirm this. In those days, and Honorable Janet Ongera, those days, if you had somebody who was going to a private school, you wondered what was wrong with them. They must have been having problems in their heads. The Deputy Speaker might have found a little bit of that. And the Honorable Naomi Shaban. But obviously, we need to get to that. Honorable Kajuang, TJ, we need to get to that. How is it that where we have 90% of our children, those are the areas where you allocate very little. There's very little learning or even very little supervision, and therefore, as a consequence, performance goes down because a few are able to take their children to private schools. Honourable members, I believe you have the opportunity, the Honourable Melia said tomorrow, and also the Honourable Ichong has also just raised it. He's going to read some statement later. Please, let us begin to ask ourselves, when did the rain start beating us? Let us restore public education to its former glory. There was a response by the chair of Lands. Are you able to do it in 5 minutes?
Yeah, I can try, Honorable Speaker, to summarize.
Please try.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I arise to respond to a statement on the status of the application for renewal of land lease for Del Monte Kenya Limited, as requested by the Honorable Engineer Jagol, Patrick Wainaina. Honorable Speaker, the Honorable Jagol sought the following issues, and I would like to read as I respond. The first one was, what is the status of application for renewal of the land lease for Del Monte Company Limited? Honorable Speaker, Del Monte Kenya Limited deals with large-scale growing and canning of pineapple fruits for local and export market. It has land holding that spans parts of Kiambu and Murang'a counties. Notable parcels of land leased to Del Monte Kenya Limited are shown in the annexure. And Honorable Speaker, in the interest of time, I'll go to the pieces of land, LR number 10733, 10735, 9213-1, 331-2-1, 1215-7, 13-169. That is LR numbers. And in Gatuenyaga Farm, which is LR number 1203. And Honorable Speaker, as you requested me to paraphrase, I will just say that this is a total of 24,793 acres. Honorable Speaker, in terms of status, which he had requested as annexed by the Cabinet Secretary, is that these are the dates of expiry, and I'll read them just the way I read the LR numbers. The first one is May 3rd, 2021. May 3rd, 2021 also. The third one, May 3rd, 2021. The fourth one, May 3rd, 2021. The fifth one, May 1st, 2022. The sixth one, May 1st, 2022. And the seventh one, May 1st, 2019. Honorable Speaker, with regard to state of lease, renewal stroke extension, all the pieces that I have read, Honorable Speaker, as per the LR read, the status is application has been tendered. Honorable Speaker, I would like now to go to the second matter. That is, what is the government doing to expedite the renewal process? The ministry is aware of and appreciates the importance of Del Monte Kenya Limited to the economy in terms of jobs creation by its local operations and the taxes paid to government. The ministry is working with the National Land Commission in engaging the county governments of Kiambu and Murang'a with a view of ironing the sticky issues in order to expedite renewal processes. The third issue, are there any plans to conduct land survey of Del Monte Company Limited with a view of establishing actual total size of land leased to the company? Honorable Speaker, it is a requirement in law that resurvey of the land is carried out in the process of lease renewal. The survey is indeed a vital step in this process. The survey shall be conducted when measures to mitigate COVID-19 have been seized off by the Ministry of Health. D, are there any plans to carry out forensic audit on land leased to Del Monte with a view of establishing the status of land used, unused land, and public land? This is the response. The survey will give a clearer picture of the land holding, including sizes, areas of the boundaries thereof. This will aid in identification and demarcation of all public land within the estate. Honorable Speaker, he also requested to know when will the timelines for renewal of Del Monte land lease be determined in order to enable the company make its plans of operation. Honorable Speaker, as I said earlier, or as I read earlier, the renewal of leases is guided by the statute. Conditions and obligations are apportioned to various players. The ministry, however, pledges to play its part in ensuring a just and transparent process that would lead to expeditious conclusion of the matter. Honorable Speaker, I also have a response from the National Land Commission on the same. Honorable Speaker, I would like to add something so that I do not cause confusion. On the second page, there is also Murang'a County. The first one I read was for Kiambu County, but I overleaf, there is Murang'a County, which is Chui Farm, LR number 121156, which is 7,000 acres. And also, with regard to status of renewal, it is also written as application has been tendered. So, Honorable Speaker, then this makes a total of 32,224 acres. Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would also like now to paraphrase the response by the National Land Commission on the same. Honorable Speaker, the first page, they're only giving the law where they draw their mandate from, so I'll not read. I'll just go to additional information. In 2017, the Commission received a historical injustice claim by Kandara Residents Association under Article 67 of the Constitution, Section 15 of the National Land Commission Act 2012. The above-mentioned group alleged historical injustice occasioned against them by Del Monte Kenya Limited, together with colonial soldiers who returned from First and Second World War. The Commission conducted investigations, heard both parties, and made recommendations via Gazette Notice number 1995 dated 1st of March 2019. In summary, the Commission made the following recommendations: that the land held and occupied by the respondent, that is Del Monte Kenya Limited, should be resurveyed. B, it is in furtherance of the above, the surplus land, if any, should be given or surrendered to the claimants. C, in the alternative, where no surplus land is discovered, the county government of Murang'a and the county government of Kiambu should be engaged. And D, that the respondent to surrender all public utilities within the land to the relevant national and county government agencies. Honorable Speaker, they've also gone ahead to quote the court cases that I'll only summarize. 1, Environment and Land Court number 53 of 2018 at Moranga, which is existing. It is by Moranga, Kandara Residents Association, and others versus Del Monte. 2, second court case, Honorable Speaker, is High Court Constitutional Petition number 48 of 2019 at Nairobi, Del Monte Kenya Limited versus the National Land Commission and Attorney General. And the third one, Environment and Land Court Judicial Review number 1 of 2019 at Moranga, Kandara Residents Association and others versus the National Land Commission. So, in conclusion, from the National Land Commission, in light of the above, the National Land Commission has been unable to process the extension of the leases for the reasons that Del Monte Kenya Limited has not made any formal application for extension to the leases to the National Land Commission as required by the provisions of Section 13 of the Land Act and the Land Regulation 2017. It is only upon receiving the applications that they will be able to take action. Honorable Speaker, these are the two responses, one by the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning and the second one by the National Land Commission. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Mijango, any comment you would wish to make?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'll say this very quickly. I cannot emphasize enough on the importance of timely survey of Del Monte land and subsequent renewal of their lease, and very importantly, surrender of unused land to the public for the public use and the community use. Here, 7,000 direct jobs and 28,000 indirect jobs are at stake, not to mention the 10 billion shillings in forex income. This company will surely wind up their operations in Kenya if something is not done today. According to National Land Commission recommendation, Gazette Notice 1995, dated 1st of March 2019, survey of this land was recommended. More than a year from then, nothing has taken place. Can the committee chair summon the CS in person, really, and explain why survey has not been done a year down the line? And can we have a timeline for the same? This is so serious, Honorable Speaker, in that it is actually on record, and you have heard it actually, that the ministry is talking of 24,000 acres, and the National Land Commission is actually talking about 32,000 acres. That's a total difference of about 8,000 acres. What is happening here? Honorable Speaker, Kandara Residents Association went to court in 2018, claiming historical injustice. There is so much land that is actually not used by Del Monte because it is not fit for planting the pineapples. And actually, the Del Monte themselves have no problem releasing this land, provided proper survey has been done. And again, this is a failure on the part of the ministry. It is not correct for National Land Commission to state that Del Monte has not done application on the lease renewal. In fact, here, I am holding a file, and in this file, there is a correspondence dated 1st of October 2012, maybe some 8 years ago, 9 years now. I also have an earlier Ministry lands correspondence on 4th of February 2013, again in this file. National Land Commission response on 2nd of July 2013. Another reminder by Del Monte on 8th of August 2014. County government of Kiambu actually has indeed sent a lease approval on 1st of October 2018. But the question is, why has this lease not been renewed to date? There has been several requests and reminders to the county government of Moranga on approval of the lease from Del Monte and copied to National Land Commission. So far, they have not said anything, keeping everyone in limbo. What is National Land Commission doing on this very loud silence from Murang'a County? Honorable Speaker, I am very disappointed with the ministry's response. They barely said nothing. The only thing I see is they will start working after COVID-19, surely, for 12 years. They have waited for COVID-19 excuse? Honorable Speaker, in my view, no need for further investigations. What we need now is action. We have everything we need. This survey and list renewal should have happened yesterday. Kindly, let the CS again present herself in person to explain why this is not happening. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, there was mention of some court cases, and the substances of the various suits hasn't quite been explained. Is it possible that it could touch on those matters? I do not want to get any answers. In fact, I'm not allowing anybody else to make any further comment. Save to make this, it doesn't matter. What is required, Honorable Jango, is for you to submit something different that will bring out all those issues. National Land Commission, Ministry of Lands, appearing before the committee, so that you are able to discuss all those issues. Why are those court cases? Do they have to do with the land, the size of the land? Does it have to do with what you are calling historical land injustices? Does it have to do with application for renewal? So all those things need to be, you need to have another round table. Bring an appropriate request before the committee, which the committee will have to sit both with the ministry and the National Land Commission, try and resolve those issues. If they are not going to affect the suits before the various courts. So I think because you are raising a number of questions, but we don't know what are those suits about. What are the cases about? Do they touch on some of the issues that you would have wanted to be answered? Is it likely, therefore, if the courts are given time, they are likely to resolve those issues? So I think you need to sit down and maybe agree. First of all, sit with the chair of the committee. Go through those suits. What are they about? And all of you who are interested in those things, even those who have written here saying you want to make some comments, no, there is no time for bonga points. Let the honorable member for Thika Town, who brought this request, still go and sit. Some of those issues you've raised, I think first of all sit with the chair of lands and see how best to address them. If they are not going to affect the pending suits, if there are matters that can be resolved by the ministry, sitting together with the National Land Commission, try to distinguish. Because even if you just talk, I mean, you can't just keep talking because it is fashionable to talk in Parliament. That cannot be the reason. I think if the intention is to reach some resolution, Honorable Jango, I think we must look for a way of bringing together the ministry and the commission first, even before you go to those other parties. After all, you represent the people of that constituency. Before others come to help you, because I can see a number who want to help you. But before they come to help you, because we don't know what kind of help they're likely to bring, just first of all sit. And if there are others with whom you can consult, to go sit with the committee, so that you can see how best to approach the matter of the land that is held by Del Monte. And also, as you say, try to find a solution as to how the company can be assisted to get a renewal. What are the stumbling blocks and all those things? I'll give the Honorable Chair of Health 5 minutes to respond. There are some issues that were raised.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll start with the one that is very short. That was a statement asked by Honorable Amalwa on the alleged demotion of top scientists at the Kenya Medical Research Institute, that is KEMRI. Mr. Speaker, I had promised last Wednesday in the afternoon that we were to get an answer, but the ministry sought for more time, and they appeared before the committee yesterday, where they indicated that they were not ready. And today, Mr. Speaker, the 6th May, there is a letter that we have gotten that I want to table, addressed to Mr. Michael CLI, and it says the ministry has communicated to KEMRI to provide information regarding the matter. The institute has requested for more time to address the issue, which includes involvement of advisory committee, hence not in a position to give proper information as requested due to the prevailing condition of COVID-19. In this regard, they are requesting for 3 weeks to allow KEMRI carry out appropriate due diligence and submit a proper report thereafter. Thank you for your continued support. The letter is signed by the PS Health, Susan Mochache, CBS. That is the first statement sought by Honorable Amalwa. The second statement, Mr. Speaker, was a statement on the measures undertaken by the government in Malaba border on management of spread of coronavirus. And this, Mr. Speaker, I'll go straight to the response. The first question was, what measures have the government taken to ensure that the long trail accused along Malaba-Nairobi Highway near Malaba town and the immediate surroundings are fumigated? The Ministry of Health has provided pumps and disinfectants to the Port Health Office, Malaba, to undertake fumigation of trucks as a standard procedure where a truck is deemed to harbor or to have been in contact with the infectious agents. In the wake of the outbreak of coronavirus, Port Health officers have been instructed to be more vigilant, to detect drivers or tandy boys who may have features of coronavirus, including screening for fever, cough, or related chest symptoms in line with protocols that have been developed for the control of COVID-19. At ground crossing and along transport corridors, should a truck operator show signs suspicious of coronavirus, besides the collection of samples for testing from the crew, the truck is fumigated before being allowed to proceed to its destination. On the second question on what measures have been taken by government to reduce the risk truck drivers and turnboys posed to people in Malaba town, border, and surrounding areas, the response is the government is fully aware of the risk posed by the truck build-up at the border. Indeed, the EAC Ministers of Health and Ministers of Trade in the last 2 weeks have held a series of consultative meetings between Kenya and Uganda Ministry of Health and Trade to address the build-up of trucks at the border occasioned by Ugandan authorities instituting testing for coronavirus at the border. This build-up has since been reduced through the Uganda authorities, increasing the number of healthcare workers undertaking the testing and reducing the number of personnel per truck requiring testing to a maximum of 2 drivers per truck. This has ensured fast clearance of truckers so as to avoid unnecessary backlog. In addition, the Ministry of Health has finalized protocols that will ensure all truck drivers operating within the transport corridors undergo testing for COVID-19 before commencement of their journey within the country. And facilities have been identified in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kajiado, Eldoret, and other regions so that by the time the truckers are starting their journey to Malaba and beyond, they already have their COVID-19 negative attestation letters. Malaba one-stop border point will also be specimen collection center, whereby the trucker specimen are taken for analysis. If the trucker turns positive, he is transferred to an isolation facility and contacts are traced. Moreover, working together with the County Health Department, the Port Health officers have also enhanced surveillance and screening of truck drivers and turnboys for signs of COVID-19 and referral to the County Rapid Response Team for appropriate action. Additionally, the National Police Service has enhanced surveillance to ensure that there is no mingling with the community by ensuring that the drivers do not alight from the trucks outside the Maraba border. At the border point, the NPS ensures there is minimal interaction and maintaining the recommended distance between clearing agents and the drivers. There is also increased health education to the truckers and the community on COVID-19 transmission and prevention by the county and border health care workers. The Ministry of Health is also in process of training volunteer groups who will be used to reach out to the trackers and the community. He also asked states whether the Ministry of Health has any plans to adequately equip Kochoria Sub-County Hospital with coronavirus testing equipment and staff protective gear. Kochoria Sub-County Hospital is equipped with one gene expert machine, which was initially installed to undertake testing for tuberculosis. The machine, however, is also capable for testing for coronavirus. Its laboratory staff component have 5 laboratory technologists, 4 of whom have been trained and have the capability to operate the machine. The equipment, however, requires specialized cartridges to test for the coronavirus. And the ministry is in process of acquiring the cartridges that will also operationalize similar equipment in other county and sub-county hospitals across the country. In the initial phase of 56 out of total 189, such machines countrywide will be operationalized, including at Busia County Hospital. In the meantime, the laboratory staff is trained to collect samples that can be shipped to the Busia County Referral Hospital, which is 26 kilometers from the border for testing. The laboratory in Busia County Referral Hospital has recently been provided with testing kits. Testing will also soon be carried out at Alupe Sub-County Hospital, which is currently an isolation and treatment center located around 20 kilometers from the border. The Port Health Facility at Malaba border point has also been staffed with 2 laboratory technologists for sample collection at the border point. As regards to personal protective equipment, the sub-county hospitals obtained its supplies from the Busia County Referral Hospital. And finally, on what action has been taken by relevant ministries to ensure that frontline medical staff and other personnel manning the Malaba border posts are adequately trained on detection and handling of coronavirus case. All port health officers are trained on disease surveillance tools and include a brief history and recording of vital signs such as body temperatures using thermograms. SOPs have been cascaded to the border point on how to detect COVID-19 cases by use of signs and symptoms and how to handle any suspected cases. Any suspected case is then linked to the County Rapid Response Team for isolation and further investigation. The Ministry of Health has trained at least 3 trainers at each county level on case management and 2 TOTs on laboratory sample collection, preparation, and shipping. These TOTs have been cascading the training of the rest of the country frontline health workers. The medical professional bodies are in the process of enabling online training through the training portals. In addition, mentorship by Port Health National Office is currently ongoing at the border points. This goes in line with provision of necessary tools and equipment needed for control. I submit and signed by the Cabinet Secretary. Mr. Speaker, last Wednesday, there was also an issue that came up, and this is a matter of public interest.
That will be 1 minute.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, 28, 2020, the Departmental Committee on Health invited the Ministry of Health to shed some light to us, among other things, funding streams received by the ministry for the fight against COVID-19 in the country, and after breakdown on how each funding stream had been utilized as of 30th April 2020. At the meeting, the ministry tabled a document that detailed various funding inflows. Among other documents was one showing 1.3 billion budgetary support from the World Bank to support the national COVID-19 response. And as soon as the document was tabled, the ministry realized it had contained the budget-approved proposals which had not been broken down to cover the 6 months of the support. Unaware that the document only contained the budget and not a costed work plan, the media went on to publicize the financial proposals. The media coverage gave an impression that the ministry had already spent 1.3 billion World Bank money in just a month, which was not the case. As expected, the coverage sparked a public outcry, although the ministry realized it had tabled an insufficient document immediately after the meeting. It was not supposed to issue a clarification because that could only happen before the Departmental Committee on Health, which was seized of the matter. On its part, the Committee on Health saw the need to invite the ministry on Tuesday, May 5th, 2020, to explain the discrepancies that were contained in its own document. And the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Health, appeared before our team on Tuesday, May 5th, 2020, and presented fresh documents which have been interrogated and accepted as a true reflection of the financial position of the various income streams. The committee has put in place a report to table in this House. It has taken the liberty to stand before you. I've taken the liberty to stand before you to make this short statement and clear the air on this matter, given that it has serious implications on ongoing COVID-19 response. I therefore wish to notify the House as follows. by the time the ministry appeared in Parliament on April 28th, the World Bank funding had not hit the ministry's account. This made us to conclude that there was no way the ministry would have misappropriated what it had not received by then. By May 5th, 2020, part of the funds had been received at the ministry, although no payments had been made based on any COVID national response. And the ministry informed the committee that the World Bank support is expected to assist the ministry.
So we move to the next. No, if you can't summarize, what? No. Yeah, now this reading of every word, dot, comma, these statements, they are other and elsewhere. Why don't you summarize? Just say this. 1 minute.
Thank you. So the ministry informed the committee that the World Bank support is expected to assist the ministry in national COVID response for a period of 6 months. That is from April to September 2020, and we were assured that the funds will be utilized prudently within the period. So, Mr. Speaker, I will table this document because there is no time, with the proper response from the ministry, and the members can be able to interrogate, and based on the concern of what has gone, what PPEs and what materials the government has given to each county, I have also attached the document so that members can go through this document as we go through the motions on COVID. Members will debate through information that have been provided by the Ministry of Health, and I beg to submit, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. No, first shot must go to one of the members who sought a statement, the Honorable Wamalo. I want to remind ourselves about the old system of question time. The questioner must at all times get the first shot as a supplementary. Honorable Wamalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. First, I want to thank Honorable Sabina for the response. But, Mr. Speaker, she has mentioned that the CS will get the proper answers within 3 weeks. It took less than an hour, Mr. Speaker, to sack Dr. Lutomia. And one of the things that required, Mr. Speaker, I simply asked straightforward questions. That what were the circumstances that led to the sacking? It is very ridiculous, Mr. Speaker, from the statement we're being told, a decision that was taken within an hour to be told that we need 3 weeks. This is enough evidence, Mr. Speaker, to show that the due process was not followed. Mr. Speaker, one of the questions that was also raised was, were there any disciplinary measures, Mr. Speaker? These are straightforward questions, Mr. Speaker. It does not mean, Mr. Speaker, at such a time of corona pandemic, we should circumvent the law. We have the Employment Act, we have the Labor Laws Act, Mr. Speaker. It is indeed important, Mr. Speaker, that we should seek justice for Dr. Lutomia. I have no otherwise, but I'll wait for the 3 weeks. And whether the board, KEMRI has a board, was the board involved in this matter, or the board was bypassed, Mr. Speaker? We know very well that Honorable Kagwe, CS Kagwe, has been doing very well. But everybody has a right to defend himself, Mr. Speaker. Dr. Lutomia, being one of the top scientists, being the director of the Virus Research Center, Mr. Speaker, the manner in which he was dismissed or he was demoted, Mr. Speaker, I think we need more explanation of this matter, Mr. Speaker. I thank you, but I'll wait for the feedback. I thank you.
Honorable Bandi, and honorable members, yes, Honorable Bandi. But honorable members, let's just, because I can still see quite a number of members desirous of coming into the chamber. Those of you who desire to leave and have no intentions of coming back, just inform the sergeant at arms, so that we don't leave a lot of empty spaces, and yet there are members who would like to come in here. Obviously, I know the Deputy Speaker is coming because he's moving a motion, but I can see a few other empty places. If the members have not indicated whether they are coming back, sergeant at arms, just usher in some of those members. They have as much right as any other to be in the chamber. Honorable Bandi.
Mr. Speaker, the issue that I want to raise regarding the statement as read by the chair of the Health Committee, and more particularly the third statement. Mr. Speaker, I noticed that the leader of majority and my whip distracted you a bit. So probably you didn't follow, but I'm sure you can follow through the Hansard what the chair just said. Mr. Speaker, the chair is telling this House that last week she gave us here a statement regarding the expenditure of 1.3 billion from World Bank. And it's turning out, Mr. Speaker, that that's the information provided by the ministry, even if she didn't give that statement formally. But she has indicated this afternoon that the statement earlier given by the ministry was not factual. And now she has given us what is allegedly the correct position. Mr. Speaker, how can Ministry of Health at this point in time, give false information to the people of Kenya regarding the expenditure of money that is being given by World Bank, 1.3 billion? Mr. Speaker, we need clear statement from the Health Ministry on what is the correct position of the expenditure that this ministry is incurring. And someone should bear responsibility if the ministry is misleading the people of Kenya and has no even shame, they can even mislead this House. Mr. Speaker, action needs to be taken against the accounting officer in that ministry. And Mr. Speaker, this is a matter of accountability. You remember, Mr. Speaker, when I spoke about accountability, I said our committee must help us in following through these amounts that we are allocating, because we know there are vultures there who are waiting to eat, to take the bigger chunk of the amounts that Kenyans, other friends of Kenya, and the Kenyan taxpayers are putting into this fund. Instead of helping the people of Kenya to fight the disease, there are vultures out there ready to embezzle this fund. And Mr. Speaker, this afternoon, the statement from the chair is testimony to that. Mr. Speaker, I would request as a matter of procedure first to get to know whether this House had been misled earlier. If not, what is the chair going to do to make sure that this ministry is held to account? Thank you.
Isn't it the same? Honorable Washiali.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I am rising to react on the response on the questions on the statement sought by Honorable Chris Wamalwa about the sacking of Dr. Lutomia. And I want to admit or declare that Dr. Lutomia comes from my constituency. Honorable Speaker, it's now about 2 weeks since Dr. Lutomia was dismissed. Dismissed does not make any difference. Okay, even if he was demoted. And for the chairperson to respond, and if this House is going to go by its calendar, it will mean that we will again have to wait for another 4 weeks for the response to be given. I think, Honorable Speaker, this will be very unfair because the country is waiting for these answers. And just like Honorable Amalwa said, responding on why you sacked or demoted someone is not a research issue where you will have to wait to mix chemicals and find out the reaction. Honorable Speaker, it was a very simple question and answer issue where the ministry should have come out quickly and given us a response. I've seen a bit on the papers, but was the procedure followed? That is the biggest question that we're asking. Therefore,
very well. So that he also doesn't take. Also if your question takes much time, like it takes to find a vaccine for coronavirus. See, it's also going to compound. Since you have already pointed out that the House is due to go to recess, Honorable Washiali. So if you also take too long to ask that. And I think the point you are raising is similar to what the Honorable Amalo has said, and the appeal is the chairperson. You said you could get the response. Yes, when you get it, let it. And these responses on our members. But anything coming from any ministry must be signed by a cabinet secretary or a principal secretary. Remember, those are the ones we know. Remember, those are the ones we know. A principal secretary or a cabinet secretary. So that should we find anything which is incorrect or meant to mislead this House, then this House will be able to take action against the author of the document. Honorable Junet, I think we can put an end to this.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, two issues about the statements that were given by the chair. The one of Dr. Lutomia, chair, if the motion was procedural, I don't see why the reason why it is taking too long to respond. So members here are feeling there is something fishy, there's cover-up, because it was procedural. But secondly, and more importantly, Mr. Speaker, the issue of the $1.3 billion for the fight on coronavirus, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is a document that was tabled here. And that document is in the public domain on how the money was spent. 4 million on Mandasi and Chai, 70 million on talking, 30 billion on gatherings. Mr. Speaker, it is the chair lady who gave us that information. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the information is all over in the public on a document that was produced by the Ministry of Health, Mr. Speaker. Actually, what we are doing here now, we are just morticians. We know the money is gone. We are just following up how we can inter the body, Mr. Speaker. We are dealing with a dead body here. I know the money has been eaten. Mr. Speaker, the question I'm asking her is, can she, I am aware also as the whip, because I have members in our committee, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday in their meeting with the officials of the Ministry of Health, the officials completely denied the previous document. So that means they want to fabricate a new one now that is fake, Mr. Speaker. So I am going to table the old document, and it must be admitted to this House, and that's the document that Kenyans must believe is the truth, and that's how the money was spent, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Sabina, can you try to clarify these issues?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, we actually said it's good for us to be factual and be precise. As I mentioned earlier, when we had asked for a statement from the ministry, last week, the statement I read, which is in this House, was only on the use of 300 million. That money is the money that the Ministry of Health had received. But we had, as a committee, asked the ministry to forward us the document on the money they had received so far and what had been utilized. And part of the document that came in, it was received by the Secretariat. It was never tabled in this House, Mr. Speaker, but leaked to the media, is a document that Honorable Junet is referring to. And we had not even gone through that budget ourselves. We actually saw it. Myself, I saw it in the media, but the Secretariat had already received it. So when we call for clarification, what I have tabled today, it is what the ministry officially has now said. By the time we were giving us the report, this money was not even in the account. Then the money that was not received, how could it have been used, Mr. Speaker? And so what I submit and what you can hold ministry responsible is the previous document that they had given the Secretariat. We had not interrogated it, and what they came before the committee and now further made amendments. And so both documents are available, Mr. Speaker, and the members of this House can be able to scrutinize both.
Wrong, and nobody is going to address that issue. Take the documents, read, then be able to cross-examine on the basis of the information. No, nobody, none. Next order. Before we go to the next order, the Chair of Budget and Appropriation Committee, you have a statement to issue.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The statement is on the preparations for the public hearings for the budget estimates for the financial year 2020-21 that will be held that was to be held in 11 counties or 12 counties by the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Honorable Speaker, as you are aware, the estimates of the expenditure and revenue for the financial year 2020-21 and the medium term were laid in this August House on Wednesday, 29 April 2020, and stood committed to the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the relevant departmental committees for them to consider and review them with a view to make recommendations to this House as per the provisions in our standing orders. Mr. Speaker, Article 221, Sub-Article 5 of the Constitution provides that during the discussion and review of the estimates, the budget and appropriations. Honorable Speaker, if you can protect me from the very loud consultations at the front.
Now, leader majority, leader minority, the whip and the chair of finance, they are the ones who are, I think they should be the ones to be chased out of the House now.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the protection. Now, saying the Constitution provides that during the discussion and review of the estimates, the Budget and Appropriations Committee shall seek representations from the public, and the recommendation shall be taken into account when the committee makes its recommendations to the Assembly. In this regard, every year since the year 2013, the Budget and Appropriations Committee has been fulfilling this constitutional requirement and has managed to undertake public hearings through visits in the various counties of our Republic. Since the year 2018, when the current committee was constituted, 24 counties have been visited, and this year we are planning to visit another 12 counties. Mr. Speaker, the committee deliberated on the choice of the counties to benefit from the resources earmarked in the approved 2020 budget policy statement to cater for public initiatives and develop the following criteria. One is giving preference to those counties that have never been visited and those which have been visited only once since the year 2013 in order of sequence. And two is regional balance, Honorable Speaker. Using these criteria, Mr. Speaker, the committee resolved to seek the views of the public in the following 12 counties. One is Tana River, 2, Garissa County, 3, Kitui County, 4, Murang'a County, 5, Turkana County, 6, Samburu County, 7, Kericho County, 8, Narok County, 9, Busia County, 10, Homa Bay County, 11, Kisii County, and 12, Kwale County. While in year 2021-2022, the committee plans to visit the following 11 counties: Meru, Nyandarua, Baringo, Kilifi, Kiambu, where I come from, Mandera, Machakos, Elgeyo Marakwet, Vihiga, Nandi, and Siaya counties. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the committee is alive to the fact that this year public consultations on the 2020-21 budget will be an exception on account of the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. And thus, on account of the issued COVID-19 guidelines, the committee will be seeking the views of members of the public and other stakeholders by inviting written submissions or memoranda through the media, as well as requesting the members of parliament from the respective counties earmarked for the hearings to caucus and submit their proposals to the committee. This exercise, Honorable Speaker, is expected to be completed by Friday, 15th May 2020. Honorable Speaker, if you allow me to emphasize that point, that the 12 counties that we intend to conduct public participations this year, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are unable to visit the counties, and therefore we shall be seeking to receive written memoranda, and we will be requesting members of parliament from the respective counties to caucus with their constituents and members from their counties and submit those memoranda by the 15th of May 2020. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the Parliamentary Budget Office for moving swiftly and unpacking the estimates in record time amidst these extraordinary times of our lives. The Budget Committee was yesterday, Tuesday, 4th May, taken through the contents of the estimates. During the briefing, Honorable Speaker, as I had mentioned earlier, it was obvious that this year's budget, despite the extraordinary time we are going through, was prepared in the usual ordinary manner. That is the business as usual pattern. Thus, Honorable Speaker, I would like to inform the House, and specifically chairpersons and entire memberships of the departmental committees, to be extremely keen in scrutinizing the estimates and make the right decisions for this country. Mr. Speaker, I am aware that the Director Parliamentary Budget Office and the Director Committee Services have circulated a calendar of events of processing the budget to all relevant committees and their secretariats. I therefore urge the departmental committees to observe these timelines. Mr. Speaker, from the initial review of the committee, by the committee, we noted that the submitted estimates have not lived to the expectations of the nation and of the moment. We expected a paradigm shift and firm proposals that related to responses to the current crisis of the pandemic and post-COVID era that include economic recovery packages, activities like SMEs rejuvenation, provision of basic needs to the populace, import substitution strategies, restructuring of our public debt, amongst other interventions, Honourable Speaker. Based on the above, the committee is planning to meet the National Treasury. Of course, Honourable Speaker, you are aware we usually do this at the end of all these consultations, following consultations with the departmental committees, the Judiciary and the Parliamentary Service Commission. But this being extraordinary times, we also want to conduct business in an extraordinary way by meeting with the National Treasury well in advance, with a view, Honourable Speaker, to engage on these issues, with an aim to request for a complete overhaul or reorganization of the 2020-21 budget to reflect the current circumstances and recovery over the medium term. I am therefore requesting the committee to be allocated a conducive and spacious meeting room, preferably this chamber, Honourable Speaker, on Thursday, 14th May 2020 from 10:30 a.m. In view of this, I would also like to extend an invitation to the chairpersons of departmental committees or their representatives to attend this meeting. Honourable Speaker, in closing, I thank you, and in closing, just to re-emphasize that last point, Honourable Speaker, that having been taken through, and I know at least 2 or 3 departmental committees have also been taken through the estimates, it's quite clear that the budget estimates that were tabled here last week, Honourable Speaker, have been prepared in a very ordinary manner. We have failed to take cognizance of the very extraordinary circumstances that face this country and the world economy at large. And therefore, we want to take an early opportunity to engage with the National Treasury, and through the National Treasury and our departmental committees to engage with the government and the executive to ensure that we prepare a budget that will be responsive to the needs of our people at this particular time. We have a health pandemic, we have a humanitarian crisis, and we have an economic recovery crisis that we must address. And therefore, I want to beg, Honourable Speaker, with your permission, if you allow the committee and chairpersons or vice chairpersons who can represent, or even nominees of committees, departmental committees, to join us on Thursday morning so that we begin this engagement with the National Treasury. So that we also forestall, Honourable Speaker, you are my witness, that last week during the Supplementary Appropriations Bill, we saw amendments being brought by the National Treasury as late as 2 p.m. when we were going into the third reading. To ensure that we are able to accommodate everything well in time, we want to start engaging with them this early. And through the departmental committees, Honourable Speaker, we should be able to do that and be able to deliver this country by June a budget that will be responsive to the current situation in our country. With that, Honourable Speaker, I thank you.
Well, since the chamber will need to be disinfected, and I'm sure it will have been disinfected, I see no reason why the chamber shouldn't be made available to you on Thursday, 14th, is it? 14th of May at 10 a.m. So I think those of you from other departmental committees, particularly the chairs or the vice chairs or any other member of a committee, a departmental committee, who is here and can make it on Thursday 14th, please, you should make time. It's that engagement with the National Treasury and our Budget and Appropriations Committee here in this chamber, I think it's an important, it's also another important meeting. I hope the chairpersons and their deputies or any member, there are some other active members of committees who are present. Please be available on that day. I know many of you are very active. You're very very active on, is it Bunge Online COVID 2019 or 19? Now, I think come to that one. That will be an important one because I know you would add value by turning up some of the many ideas that I've seen you canvass. Maybe they could get accommodation when you engage within the budgetary process, and more particularly with the National Treasury. Well, let me not engage in that. If members cannot really come for budget engagements, then I don't know. We've just been talking about education here. I mean, surely let them. If there's need, they will be communicated. But treat this as the best invitation. Next order.
Order number 8, procedural motion, extension of sitting time.
Leader of majority. So, members, we have taken so much time dealing with the preliminary issues. This may be important.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 30, subsection 3A, this House orders that should the time appointed for adjournment of the House be reached before the conclusion of business appearing under order number 14 on today's order paper, the sitting of the House shall be extended until the conclusion of the said business. Mr. Speaker, considering the importance of business before us today and without anticipating debate, this House is scheduled to proceed for a long recess today. And let me make it very clear, because Mr. Speaker, when I went out, some members were asking me, why are we going on recess? And I think you need to learn how the calendar of the House works. Ideally, we are not going on a recess. We only go on a recess from the main chamber. Go to the budget-making process. The month of May is when committees interrogate the budget, the estimates for 2020-2021. So committees will be very, very busy. It is only we are getting a recess from the chamber, so that committees can engage their departmental, their sector ministries and agencies. Then they can engage the budget and appropriation committee through the National Treasury, and then bring a report. So by the time we are coming back, we will have a report. So we are not adjourning for a long recess. In fact, the only persons who are not members of committees in this House is the Speaker, myself, and the Deputy Speaker, and us and the clerk, and we will be around. The Leader of Minority is a very active member of the Budget Committee. So this May, beginning the 14th, I think the Chair of Budget has said 14th. So from 14th until when we come back, we will be very, very busy with the budget. And for this reason, I seek to extend the sitting of the time to allow for consideration of key business outlined in the order paper today before we proceed on recess. So that, we finish everything. We are not like, the other House. We have serious business to do. And we don't want to be accused, the House Business Committee. I'm not in some of the forums. We're being asked, they are delaying this motion, they're delaying this motion. No, the House Business Committee always looks at what is more urgent. The supplementary appropriation report and budget bill were very urgent. The tax laws were very urgent. The regulations that were passed were very urgent. And of course, the matter before us today are also very urgent, but in terms of priority. So let us be here. I think tonight we will not stay long. By 7:30, 8 o'clock, we will be through. If we finish before 7, well and good. But I think it's good that as we go to discuss the budget in our various committees, we have completed what was on our table as the House Business Committee and as the National Assembly. So I beg to move small procedure motion. Ask Honorable Bandi to second.
Honorable Bandi.
I second, Mr. Speaker.
I propose the question, which is that pursuant to provision starting under number 30, subsection 3, paragraph A, this House orders that should the time appointed for adjournment of the House be reached before conclusion of business appearing under order number 14 on today's order paper, the sitting of the House shall stand extended until the conclusion of the said business. I put the question. Put the question that pursuant to provision standing on number 30, subsection 3, paragraph A, this House orders that should the time appointed for adjournment of the House be reached before conclusion of the business appearing under order 14 on today's order paper, the sitting of the House shall stand extended until conclusion of the business or the said business. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honourable members, while still on my feet, I wish to clarify the point that the leader majority has just made, that already I have received a number of requests from chairs and vice chairs and members of certain departmental committees to begin engagement with the estimates for 2020-2021. And therefore, even as much as we say the House is scheduled to go to recess, don't put your mind to be in the village. Please remember your committee will be meeting, engaging with the various players in the areas that you oversight in those committees. So please bear that in mind so that then we don't start hearing of lack of quorum in committees. It is important. Before we move to the next one, allow me to invite the Vice Chair, Departmental Committee on Agriculture, Livestock, the Honorable Wangwe, to make some statements.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 131, you directed that the amendments received for the T-Bill, Senate Bill number 36 of 2018, be subjected to the winnowing process by our committee. Honorable Speaker, the following members have proposed various amendments to the bill: the Honorable Ivo Bara, the Honorable Ronald Tonui, the Honorable Ezekiel Mashogu, the Honorable Cecily Mbarire, the Honorable Kishimu Githinji, and the Honorable Brighton Yegon. Honorable Speaker, this notification came to our knowledge today, the 6th day of May 2020, and owing to the urgency, the committee reached out to the members this morning. However, the committee managed to reach the Honorable Cecily Mbarire and the Honorable Kishimu Githinji. Honorable Speaker, the committee was not able to meet the other 4 members to deliberate on the proposals regarding this matter. Mr. Speaker, sir, since the Committee of the Whole House was scheduled to proceed this afternoon, it wasn't feasible to conduct the winnowing process as envisaged under Standing Order 131. Honorable Speaker, I leave this to you to provide guidance on this matter specifically as we seek your directions on how to proceed and pray for more time to undertake the winnowing exercise effectively so as to enrich the bill by engaging the members in proper deliberation. We thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, Honourable members, the request that is being made, which had been communicated to me, is some of those proposed amendments actually came as late as yesterday. And That was shortly after I left office. So they were brought to my attention today, but I nevertheless approved them with directions that because there are so many, and some of them are very, very substantial in the propositions, they needed to be first of all discussed between the committee and the respective members proposing them. In the event the committee and the members are not able to agree, then a report will be made and the members will still be permitted, subject to Article 114 of the Constitution, with respect to some of them, to move them during Committee of the Whole House. And therefore, given that circumstance, I will direct that the T-Bill, Senate Bill number 36 of 2018, be removed from the order paper, appearing as Roman 3 and order number 12. Not be considered today, taken out of the order, the paper. But they encourage the committee to have that meeting agreed with the members of proposing. Next order.
Order number 9, procedural motion. Consideration of certain business received during the May-June 2020 recess.
Leader Majority.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 41 and 42 relating to conveying of messages from the Senate and from the President or the National Executive, and Standing Order 120, 122, and 126 relating to publication, procedure upon publication, and first reading of bills, this House orders that during the period of this recess of the first part of the session, May-June 2020, A, upon receipt of any message from the Senate or upon receipt any name of a person nominating for appointment to a state or a public office from the President or any other office in the National Executive, the Speaker shall forthwith refer such message to the relevant committee for consideration without having to recall the House. 2, or B, should a bill be published during this period or a published bill become due for first reading during the period, the Speaker shall, upon lapse of 7 days following publication of the bill, forthwith refer such bill to the relevant committee for consideration pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 127, Committee of Bills to Committees and Public Participation, and upon resumption of the House, cause the bill to be read a first time, and the second reading may be taken forthwith or on such other day as the House Business Committee may make a determination. And C, should the Speaker receive a message relating to the Senate amendments to a bill originating in the National Assembly, because we have a number of our bills in the Senate, the Speaker shall forthwith refer the schedule of the Senate amendments to the relevant committee for consideration pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 145, Senate amendments to bills originating to the National Assembly, and upon resumption of the House, report such fact to the House. And Speaker, this is a matter that we have done before, but because of the COVID-19 situation, and the various committees will be dealing with the budget estimates for 2020 and 2021, the House Business Committee that you chair felt that in the event during this period that the plenary will not be sitting, in the event we receive a message from the Senate on their bills, in the event that we receive a message from the President on appointments or any other body, constitutional body, In the event that the Senate sends messages to the House based on our bills which are in the Senate, for example, the sectional bill, the Speaker will use this motion in the event that we have a number of bills now which are being prepared by our legal drafters in Parliament. So in the event that when they are published and they are ready for first reading, or the Speaker can forward them to the committees, whether it's a message, whether it is a bill that has been published and has matured, whether it is a bill from the Senate, whether it is a bill of the National Assembly that the Senate is sending a message, the Speaker will now have the powers, if this motion is approved, to send it to the relevant committees for consideration. But on bills, once we come back, then those bills will be read first time, then go to the second time. So this is the procedural motion before us today. It's meant to ensure that members are not recalled from this recess for any of the above mentioned reasons and cases, and this also to ensure that our rules and procedure are followed and no impediment is made to the mandate of this House when it comes to law-making process. Mr. Speaker, this morning you are not on the chair, the Deputy Speaker was on the chair. That's why we are saying even the next motion on amending the standing orders, anything that we do, whether there is COVID-19, whether there will be any other disaster or emergency, the Constitution and the standing orders and the procedure and the precedents and the communications of the Speaker must always be upheld. We will not circumvent the Constitution or the standing order just because there is a pandemic. So all that we are going to do, we must do it procedurally. So, Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to move and ask Honorable Bandi, who is a member of the House Business Committee and the minority leader, to second this procedural motion.
Honorable Leader Majority, I think you did not move D. There's a D, which is very much similar to the... Give him the mic. Give him the mic. Give him the mic.
Speaker, this must be the combination of fasting and COVID-19 and many, many things. I'm very sorry. So D says, should the Speaker receive a message from the Senate in respect of any special bill concerning county government or a division of revenue amendment bill, the Speaker shall forthwith refer such a bill and the accompanying messages to the relevant committee for consideration pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 143.3, that is consideration of bills originating from the Senate, and upon resumption of the House, causes the bill to be read, a first and a second reading may be taken forthwith, and such other day as the House Business Committee may decide. In fact, this is particularly to deal with Division of Revenue Bill and County Revenue Allocation Bill. So Division of Revenue Bill we have dealt with, it has been assented to. So I'm sure one of the bills we are sure to receive is the CARA bill. And now this motion allows the Speaker to send directly to the Budget and Appropriation Committee for consideration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move and ask Honorable Bandi to second.
Honorable Bandi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In seconding, I wish to state the following. One, that, Mr. Speaker, I think the House will agree with that it used to be very untidy, where we go on recess and then the Speaker is forced to call or recall Parliament just for bills to be read for a first time, and then we again adjourn for recess. And or where communication is made that an appointment has been made by the President, and therefore the matter is referred to the committee, and then the House adjourns, because again, when House is reconvened during recess, you only deal with the matter that caused the House to be reconvened. So, Mr. Speaker, to save time and also to allow these processes to continue, even when the House is on recess, then now we are giving the Speaker the authority to be communicating these messages direct to the committees, and the committees deal with the public hearing and public participation on the bills, on presidential appointments, if at all there will be, on communication from the Senate, and also matters like the DORA and CARA bills. And when we come back, the public hearing stage is concluded, the committee has prepared a report, and then we immediately resume. So I think, Mr. Speaker, this is something we have adopted recently, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and I would urge the House to agree with us. I second.
I propose the question that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 41 and Orders 41 and 42 relating to conveying of messages from the Senate and from the President or the National Executive, and Standing Orders 120, 122, and 126 relating to publication, procedure, period of the upon publication and first reading of bills, this House orders that during the period of the long recess or the first part of the session, that is May/June 2020, A, upon receipt of any message from the Senate or upon receipt of any message, any name of a person nominated for appointment to a state or public office from the President or any other office in the National Executive, Speaker shall forthwith refer such message to the relevant committee for consideration without having to recall the House. B, should a bill be published during the period or is a published bill becomes due for first reading during the period, the Speaker shall, upon lapse of 7 days following the publication of the bill, forthwith refer such bill to the relevant committee for consideration pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 127 dealing with committee of bills to committees and public participation, and upon resumption of the House, cause the bill to be read a first time, and the second reading may be taken forthwith or on such other day as the House Business Committee may determine. C, should the Speaker receive a message relating to the Senate's amendment to a bill originating in the National Assembly, the Speaker shall forthwith refer the schedule of the Senate amendments to the relevant committee for consideration pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 145 relating to Senate amendments to bills originating in the National Assembly, and upon resumption of the House, report such fact to the House. At D, should the Speaker receive a message from the Senate in respect of any special bill concerning county governments or a division of revenue amendment bill, the Speaker shall forthwith refer such bill and the accompanying message to the relevant committee for consideration pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 143.3 dealing with consideration of bills originating in the Senate, and upon resumption of the House, cause the bill to be read a first time, and the second reading may be taken forthwith, all on such other day as the House Business Committee may determine. I put the question that the motion as read be approved. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honourable members, I think it's important for even those that are not in the chamber to note this, because that is a resolution of the House and it can only be varied by another resolution. So that's a better, as Honorable John Bandi has explained and Honorable Duale has explained, it's a better way of dealing with such procedural issues. Very well. Next order.
Order number 10, motion. Amendments to the standing orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the House.
The Vice Chairperson of Procedure and House Rules Committee, the Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you.
And the sergeant, sorry, Honorable Deputy Speaker, Sergeant at Arms, if there are still some members, as I can see some hovering around out there, there are many empty chairs. I can see members of the night shift have started making their way in, led by the Honorable Florence Mutua. Proceed, Deputy Speaker.
On a light note, Mr. Speaker, many of us members keep floating all the time. We talk about night shift because we really don't understand what it is. I'm going to talk to Honorable Mutua to probably induct me to that night shift. It looks like it's a very good thing, Honorable Speaker. But, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the fourth report of the Procedure and House Rules Committee on amendments of the standing orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the House and its committees, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, May 6, 2020, and pursuant to provisions of Article 124(1) of the Constitution and Standing Orders 265, one, resolved to amend its standing orders as contained in the schedule to the report, and two, orders that the amendments to the standing orders as contained in the schedule to the report comes into effect on Monday, 18th May 2020. Honorable Speaker, I will be very brief because I know members already have the document, and I've also decided that I allow the gentleman who will be seconding me to take most of the talking. I know him to have really sat through this, particularly as a chair of a subcommittee that was created by that particular committee. We held a meeting, Mr. Speaker, and as I move this motion, members will agree that we are operating in a very unprecedented times, times that has never been seen in the recent history because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is a global pandemic that requires the rethinking and rethinking of the operations of many institutions in the world. Mr. Speaker, we looked at various jurisdictions, and we want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, because you very quickly moved when this pandemic was declared in Kenya to make the workings of the House favorable to members. There are many things that you have done which were not even done and have not been done in other parliaments. And we have looked at many, many parliaments world over. We've looked at the House of Commons, which works in almost the same way as ours. We have looked at the Congress in the US. We have even looked at the other house in the UK, that is the Senate, and seen that every house is trying to adapt to new procedures where they are able to at the same time as they work, they are also able to keep safe from this pandemic. And Mr. Speaker, we really are not, we do not want to really look at it as COVID. We want to look at it as any other pandemic that might arise in future. So that when we are changing the standing orders, it will in the meantime work against the COVID, but in future, should there be any other situation, it will be able to cater for that. So Mr. Speaker, following of course the declaration of this as a global pandemic on 11th March by the World Health Organization, various public health protocols were instituted, including reduction of large public gathering to reduce contact among citizens. This followed the increased number of cases, both at its epicenter, which was Wuhan in China, as well as in other countries thereafter. And this development saw the unprecedented measures, including closure of schools, which has been done in Kenya and many other countries, to reduce the number of staff working in their workplaces, the famous term which is work from home, Mr. Speaker. In that particular meeting where we passed this, this particular, we agreed on this particular motion, Mr. Speaker, we had a brief, we tried briefly to see if it works. And we entered into a meeting where we had both the presence of members and at the same time those members who are following us virtually. It was very interesting, Mr. Speaker, because there are many, many things when this, if the House passes this, that we need to consider, including the rules of how we are going to be operating. In that particular meeting, for example, when we were using the Zoom technology, some members at home dressed in a particular manner. Some were in caps, for example. Others, and I'm not pinpointing, I might only look at the person who did that, Mr. Speaker, and then you would know where my eyes are looking for. And Mr. Speaker, it is not you. I am looking a little further. I am short-sighted, the leader of minority. But, but Mr. Speaker, there was also a member who, as he was very busy and she was very good following the meeting. A child, obviously, most likely, noting the age of the member, must have been a daughter, came very and participated in the meeting. And as a committee, we said, now that is where a non-member or a stranger got into our meetings as we progressed. Mr. Speaker, another member went into speaking in vernacular without knowing, for example, that she was still actively being followed. Went vernacular, we thought that was an unparliamentary language, and so forth. So, Mr. Speaker, there are quite a number of things that will have to be considered once this one is passed. So, Mr. Speaker, the basic issue that we are trying to achieve in this particular one is to amend our standing orders, to keep with the times. It is good that we did not again decide to go specifics, saying, for example, that we would want to go to a certain service provider, because we realized even Parliament can decide to have a tailor-made service for members. But there are quite a number of other issues also that came as a challenge. Mr. Speaker, the greatest challenge is the issue of voting. It's not very difficult to get into a virtual meeting, but it is difficult first to have a fully virtual meeting. It's not very tidy, because there are issues, of course, of quorum and so many other things of that nature. And again, we must maintain the August House, we must maintain the National Assembly as an assembly, so that if we decide that we want to do everything virtual, maybe we lose out on that particular one, Mr. Speaker. On the issue of voting again, that is an extremely sensitive area, which probably we need to consider and have a lot of thought into it. For example, this morning, Mr. Speaker, there were issues among members as to what happens in other houses in the world, and probably even within the Republic, where one member can decide to vote for other members. Those are issues, Mr. Speaker, that must come in, because we must be alive again to the Constitution that we passed. So, Mr. Speaker, as we progress on this particular one, there are quite a number of issues that will come up, but I know this House and yourself are up to the task that we will be able to manage this particular process. Mr. Speaker, subject to adoption of this report and accompanying amendments to the standing order, the committee will, led by yourself, of course, will, as a matter of necessity, have to create guidelines. We want to know how members will approach these virtual meetings. Will they have to dress like they are supposed to dress formally in Parliament? It was the feeling of the committee that they should actually be formally dressed, like they would be so that they are together. The members who are in the meeting and those ones who are following virtually are dressed in a similar manner. So, Mr. Speaker, it is important for the House also to know the committee strongly recommends a hybrid system. Hybrid system that combines both physical and virtual proceedings. This is especially in matters that are related to substantive legislative business of the House. In all jurisdictions that we looked at, Mr. Speaker, none of them has gone completely virtual. There is always some element of having to participate physically by members. You see, the fewer the members, the easier there will be the issue of physical distancing, and therefore there will be the issue of protecting ourselves from contracting some of these diseases will be catered for. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, we do hope that the House will approve these proposals to allow for conclusions of guidelines during the recess period. This will ensure that by the time the House resumes, there will be guidelines in place for the House. And, Mr. Speaker, I must commend quite a number of committees of this House which have actually started trying out these things. I know the Committee on Health has done that. I know the Committee on Finance did very ably. Several committees have done that, and it is possible that we can still move as a House, even in these difficult times. So, Mr. Speaker, having congratulated you for handling this matter very diligently, Mr. Speaker, I wish to request Honorable T.J. Kajwang, my old classmate, Mr. Speaker, who has a problem with these gadgets that we are using because of the shape of the nose that he has. And I had seen it for a very long time, Mr. Speaker. And he's not the only one. We have other members who have those issues. And I was telling him that it is possible that he can talk to, designers to get a specific one that handles. But he was very active in this particular one. He put a lot of effort. He became a chair of a subcommittee that was created in that particular committee and looked into these specific things. So, Mr. Speaker, I move and ask my friend, Honorable Kajwang, to second it. Thank you.
Honorable T.J. Kajwang.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish there were shops for noses. I would have looked for a very narrow and smaller one. This bigger one is giving me problems because it demands so much air than the mask can give. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to second the motion for the adoption of the fourth report of the Procedure and the House Rules Committee on the amendments to the standing orders to facilitate the virtual sittings of the House and its committees. I want to commend the Deputy Speaker for leading us in the Procedure and House Rules Committee very ably, and for showing us first how to wear a mask and how to keep it above the nose. Mr. Speaker, sir, these are extraordinary times, and so we must be very versatile, we must be dynamic, and we must come up with extraordinary measures. And so this is the first time in Africa, actually, that the first house is coming up with rules, designing rules for virtual proceedings. You can research the whole of Africa. Indeed, you can research in many jurisdictions, and we have looked everywhere. We are one of the first people that have literally changed our laws, or sought to change our laws to provide for virtual proceedings. I know there are so many people who are trying it, but they do not have the courage to write it in law. They would still do it behind the law, but this is the first time that we have taken this proactive measure to put it in law so that we have a transparent method, an objective criteria, a law with which we are able to deal with these issues as they rise. We don't want to be on the streets and be heard issuing decrees or orders, making laws without putting those laws in written context, so that Kenyans should know and expect that this is what the National Assembly will do. That's why out there, they seem to be saying, or some people I hear saying, that National Assembly is doing nothing. Yet they do not know that they have not even proposed the legislation on COVID. Nobody has brought any legislation to this assembly on COVID. And so how do you expect Parliament to act in vacuum? Yes, we are legislators. We have presented proposals for a COVID law, and it is doing its rounds according to the law that we have done. And so when you hear people joining the Wanjirus that I represent, and they speak like we are in a public rally, and then they say that we are doing nothing, forget about them. They are members, most of them are in the media, for example, who would want to make a headline and of course, some earnings. So some of the things that you need to be thinking about, members. First of all, you don't need to be overexcited. This is National Assembly, this is Parliament. This is not a conference. This is not one of those discussions which you can hold informally. Parliament has a tradition. Parliament is the epitome, is the macrosome of integrity of the nation. And so, yes, even when we have very difficult conditions, there need to be a semblance of dignity and integrity, that people know that that is now the National Assembly transacting business, and it is, Mr. Speaker, sir, I seem to be taking so much time, but please allow me to...
No, proceed. Proceed.
Yes, so that there is decorum. After all, if you decide to behave the way they do in conferences, nobody will differentiate what happens in a conference and what is happening in the National Assembly. So that's why when I hear members saying that I will be in my house in Madare or in Waraka, and as I am serving my constituents with one hand, I will also be virtually participating in proceedings. Parliament is made out of traditions over the years. And you must equate yourself with the parliament in your closest jurisdictions. So there are issues which you must think to bear. Article number 10 is the basis for which you must always think how you debate in this house. Article 86 says that voting must be, the words are that voting in any method you choose, voting must be accurate, verifiable, secure, accountable, transparent, and facilitate the prompt declaration of the results of each vote. You know, the interesting thing with Article 86A, although it is designed for the elections, but when you look at it, it is a principle that runs across the Constitution, that whenever you want to do any voting, including here, it should be a process which is verifiable and secure. Mr. Speaker, members must think about Powers and Privileges Act. It draws from the Constitution itself, 118. And so there is what is defined as presence of Parliament. And it is that presence of Parliament from which there is now privileges, the immunity you're talking about. Yes, of course, you can do committee work, and we have been doing it before. I can go to Mombasa, and I can say something, and I am immune from whatever I say. But what if, for example, you have you are somewhere, wherever you are, and somebody places a gun on your head? Where will you get the immunity when you are out there? Or, for example, somebody appears and demands to influence you in some manner to vote or to participate in a way. Or in a very simple area that the Deputy Speaker has talked about, there is that stranger in the house who insists that you must do certain things his or her way. These are things you must think about when you are thinking of how you want to have these guidelines. Mr. Speaker, sir, 117, Article 117, this is a house of free speech, house for debate. We must be robust, and we need to be as free as we can to be able to express ourselves. So even when we are talking about that, we need to see how then that enhances our freedom to be able to debate. Honorable Speaker, 126, Parliament is here where the Speaker is. Where you see the Speaker convening, the presiding officer convening, that is where Parliament is. And so you can be wherever you are, but the Hansard and the material for this house will be taken to have come from the house. Article 127, Mr. Speaker, sir, I was speaking to the member from Uasin Gishu, my very good friend, Honorable Chepkut. We were comparing our gadgets, and we found that I have a Muleka Mwizi. Mr. Speaker, sir, Muleka Mwizi is that kind of phone that is not able to host some of these things that we're talking about. And so we found that with that member, we own a Muleka Mwizi. Yes. The leader of minority has never been in this thing called WhatsApp. He doesn't even know it. If you asked him to operate it, he would not know it. He does not know what Facebook means. So some of these things, Mr. Speaker, it's all right. You have to send him an SMS or call him physically to be able to get this leader of minority. The Deputy Speaker, Mr. Speaker, is a person that I've known for long, has the problems I have of digital compliance. So that even when you're talking about these gadgets, there must be some standardization of the devices so that there is quality assurance in the product that we have here. And so PSC as a facilitative role. That we would go back to the debate we had in the other parliament, the 11th parliament, when we said that members should be able to carry a tablet or an iPad with him. Then there was this popular, discussions. People were too popular. They're saying, oh, we have increased our allowances. Now we want to work with iPads. We were just creating a situation in which members are better equipped to be able to handle the proceedings of the assembly. And so you will see that in one of those rules in the use of technology, we have said that the clerk shall facilitate the participation of members, meaning that we will have some standard device. By the way, Mr. Speaker, I'm being told that if you have a phone, and if you log your phone,
continue.
If you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Not there.
I will take just one moment. That if you log in your phone while you are in the virtual proceedings, and a phone comes or a call comes, the virtual proceedings is cancelled, and you have to attend to the phone. So in other words, you must have another device other than the phone you regularly use to be able to enter into that virtual proceedings. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, these are some of the principles that we have in this report, and I urge members to support it. But we have also come up with a distinction between what is deliberative and what is the business of the House. So that what is deliberative, Mr. Speaker, sir, members should be free to join in wherever they are and deliberate on those issues which do not call to vote. For example, statements, for example, a debate on adjournment of the House on an urgent matter, those issues which do not call a vote. Members can tune in wherever they are. But on issues which call for the vote, remember, no jurisdiction on earth has a virtual voting system. You can challenge me on this. No jurisdiction on earth. That means even America, even Britain, they still will come back to the physical voting here. So even if people were out there debating, I think, Mr. Speaker, sir, we must have some guidelines that brings in members, even if it is in batches. Today, this group will come and vote, and then leaves for another group, until we have all the votes and we are able to verify those votes. That is the only time we will know as representatives that what we are discussing here comes from the will of the people, because we are the people. That is the principle of the Constitution. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to second this and request that when we develop the guidelines, we will have a way in which all members will be consulted for some kind of stakeholder, that they are able to give us their views on how they want these guidelines to take, because the Speaker will be relying on the recommendation of the committee. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Sorry? Can you give? Well, I think I commend the members for doing that, and also, of course, appreciating some of those issues which are in the Constitution, and more particularly Article 122. Now, members, I propose a question. It says that this House adopts the fourth report of the Procedure and House Rules Committee on amendments to the standing orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the House and its committees, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, May 6, 2020, and pursuant to provisions of Article 124, Clause 1 of the Constitution, and Standing Order 265, 1, resolves to amend its standing orders as contained in the schedule to the report, and 2, orders that the amendments to the standing orders as contained in the schedule to the report shall come into effect on Monday, 18th May 2020. Leader Majority.
Honorable Amos Kibuye is saying put. I don't know what put is. Maybe you should have finished. You should have said put the question. Honorable Speaker, this is, I rise to support this motion for the adoption of the fourth report of the Procedure and House Rules Committee on the amendment to the standing orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the House and its committees. This is a very unique. We have never done that. I mean, we have amended our standing orders. But why are we doing this? We are doing this because of COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, the importance, I think, why, and I really want to thank the members of the House Procedure and House Rules Committee, is that we don't want to work in haphazard. You have seen our colleagues who are voting, despite Article 123, I think, who are voting through proxy, which is unconstitutional. So I think the Procedure and House Rules Committee decided to bring to this House the use of technology on matters quorum, on matters voting, on matters orderly conduct, among other provisions, across all committees, so that the Committee of Health cannot do this, the one of Energy can do its own. So we wanted to have one uniformity. And as Honorable TJ said, being the first one in Africa, we have been, one of the few parliaments and also National Assembly which have been offering benchmarkings. So I'm sure many parliaments will come and learn from us. Because this has never happened, and the situation is very, very common in many countries. I mean, if you look at the House of Representatives, the U.S. Congress, I'm sure they are also trying to see how do we deal with matters, the House of Commons, the South African Parliament. So such rules will ensure that there's uniformity, especially among committees, with regards to remote participation of members in the proceedings of a committee. But there's an important element I need to mention, particularly that was happening with the Zoom. Please, the moment you want to participate using this technology, you must make sure your mind and your heart and your physical presence is to that. Because you can decide to play some, I mean, how you play, what you wear, where you are, who you are talking to. It's a very dangerous, and I'm sure Musimba will tell you, he knows this area. So if you decide to participate in what we are doing, then the whole of you must be on that business. Otherwise, it can cost you your seat. It can cost you your seat. I'm saying, I'm serious. Yeah, you don't scratch some places that you're not supposed to scratch. You don't, when your mic is supposed to be mute, it must be mute. That's why Speaker, I decided to speak, because Honorable Deputy Speaker and Honorable TJ, they spoke, from a technical part. But, even at home, there are times when you see some, and I agree, Honorable Leader doesn't have WhatsApp. And I wish I could join him. Because without a WhatsApp, you lead a very good life in Kenya. So he has no WhatsApp. If I have to look for him, I have to look for him through a text message. So please, let us make sure our mind and everything is towards what we are doing. Secondly, as has been noted, no legislature has fully embraced this kind of proceedings on a substantive legislative business, whereas some of the committees, including the Procedure and House Rules Committee, had a hybrid sittings, each managed the issues individually. But I'm sure you will not vote. You will not be allowed to vote this way. Because what about if your girlfriend or your wife votes? We have to, your vote, you represent the people. Your wife does not represent the constituency. The only constituency you can represent is your family, your home. That's the only way you can delegate. So I think, Father, Honorable Deputy Speaker, you need to introduce electronic technology where you can vote biometrically, that we can confirm it's not your son or your daughter or your house girl or your houseboy, it is you who voted. The Speaker, members also will agree with me that everyone in the country is looking at how the national leadership will tackle the pandemic. This is therefore an important step towards offering a national example through the application of social distancing protocols using technology. So Parliament has led by the example. We want to make sure that we will implement social distancing using technology. And Mr. Speaker, you know, people say Parliament is not working. Parliament, now I'm sure tomorrow people will say, and that's what I'm repeating, people will say, oh, they have gone on recess for 1 month. We are going, what is going on recess, and let me go on record, is a plenary sitting. Parliament, the whole month of May, from what the chair budget said, a timetable has been drawn from next week, 14th of May, to the time in the first week of June when we are coming back. Committees will be interrogating the estimates submitted by the National Treasury. The Finance Committee has another extra work to interrogate the finance bill. I'm sure the delegated legislation will deal with more regulations coming from the national government. So, Mr. Speaker, Parliament, and more so, let me speak for the National Assembly, we are not going on recess. This is how Parliament, the National Assembly is a budget-making house. And being the budget-making house, before the Minister for National Treasury reads, and one of former ministers sitting behind me, Honorable Kimunya, is this process must take place. Parliament committees must interrogate the estimates. The Budget Committee must bring a report to this House. Based on the approval of that report, then the Minister will read the budget somewhere in the second week of June. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a very good step. I really want to thank the committee, and with those many, many remarks, I beg to support and ask members to support this amendment to the standing orders.
Honorable Musimba.
Thank you, Speaker, for this opportunity. Once again, I want to echo the words of congratulations to the committee and indeed to the House of Parliament, because we've shown progression. And ever since this whole pandemic came, I think we've rose, and I think through the clerk's office, your able leadership, it's expressed and shown great courage in making a stand, not just in Kenya, but for the world, in embracing ICT as an able enabler and in reviewing its rules in line with our constitution, which is very specific, especially when it comes to the budget-making process, where there are existing timelines. And we know we are dealing with lives and livelihoods. And I think these are great measures that we've taken as a House in terms of moving. And that's exactly just to echo what the majority leader said. We need to also move progressively and see how we can move even to the realm of voting through biometrics, because we as a House already have a biometric register within it. And in line with Article 127, which the second Honorable T.J. Kajwang spoke about, in terms of facilitation of members, in terms of devices, in terms of standardization, we get to that level where even the way we provide for the communication in terms of fiber optic networks, it becomes seamless. That whether a member is here or away on parliamentary business, around the world, even when we convene and things get to normalcy, we will have made great strides in ensuring every single voice of every member, every idea is actually captured. And Mr. Speaker, we as a House have always been progressive, especially in terms of provision for persons with disabilities. We are the first to have already made our House, disability friendly. And this will move great strides in people who are blind in future to be able to participate through Braille, through all these other devices that will be encompassed. So it's as I support this initiative and indeed the report, we look forward to taking this to another helm. And I believe, Speaker, in your role as the chairman of the Africa chapter of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, I think you'll continue being a beacon and showing great discourse towards all these parliaments and the way forward for their nation and nations and their people. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to also contribute to this important motion. And let me start at the onset by thanking the committee, and especially so the Secretariat that really did a lot of background work for this committee in terms of researching what is happening in other jurisdictions and giving us the necessary information that would have assisted us make the decisions that we made. And also thank the Chair, Honorable Cheboy, who also gave us quite some good leadership throughout the whole process. And we are happy that we finally brought a document for this House to consider. Mr. Speaker, let me say that we obviously thought, should we pass this particular standing orders just for this specific moment that we are going through extraordinary time, but we said, you know, we never know about the future. No one thought that we could get to a point where we are all at home and we are unable to meet like we used to. If anybody had told us that Kenya would be the way it is and the world would be the way it is right now, a lot of us would have doubted that that was practically possible. But here we are facing a reality, and so it's important that whatever it is we legislate, whether in terms of standing orders or laws, we must make sure it is something that can withstand the test of time, and that those who will come after us are able to deal with any situation of this nature in a better in a better way, and they should be better prepared, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me also say we had first-hand experience of having some of our members in the committee actually participate virtually. We had a member like Honorable Mushomba who participated from Kiambu. We had Honorable Rueda who was participating all the way from Lamu. And we had the Honorable Women Rep of Kwale who was all the way at home. And so let me say that, and Honorable Dawood who was all the way in Meru. So it shows you that it is possible for us to carry out useful government, legislative business or parliamentary business without having to be physically present if circumstances demand so. And so we have that first-hand experience. And Mr. Speaker, earlier on, I had two members of the Health Committee speaking, and I just want to add my voice to that of the Chair, Honorable Cheboy, that, you know, one member was saying that as they were sitting and one of them was participating virtually, that he came carrying a drink that I don't want to mention, and made the rest of the committee members start getting thirsty on their throats, and he totally disrupted. And he says, you know, I had no idea. This member says he had no idea that he was being seen. So I agree with Honorable T.J. Kajwang that we will definitely need some rules and guidelines on how to do this so that people dress well, so that we also don't have disruptions of families, because like in our committee, we did have Honorable Amushomba busy talking her native language with her children, and she didn't know she was in the mic. And so we will need to have some form of decorum and a way of doing it so that we don't end up getting embarrassed or disrupting proper proceedings of the House. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I want to say time has come for us to go digital. We started by going digital in terms of our voting. We are always a first as a nation, especially in Africa, in terms of adopting technology. This is a great move for this parliament, and obviously you will go down history, Mr. Speaker, as having helped to get us into the digital world going forward. With those many remarks, I beg to support.
Honorable Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also support this motion. Mr. Speaker, this amendment to the standing order to introduce virtual sitting is, according to me, long overdue. Because as you know, Mr. Speaker, that Interparliamentary Union, which we are members to, has been engaging on how to encourage parliaments across the world to adopt e-parliament. So this will help us to fasten the process towards achievement of e-parliament in future. But most importantly, Mr. Speaker, these guidelines are important because they are not going to interfere with the norms, traditions of Parliament. The way they are designed, you look at them, you don't see anything that will negate the traditions of Parliament as we know. They are also in line with our Constitution in terms of voting, in terms of quorum, and many aspects of Parliament. But most importantly, Mr. Speaker, is the trends across the world. Many parliaments across the world have adopted virtual sitting, especially at this point in time with COVID-19. And I think we are not far off from many other parliaments across the world. And we need to get an example of the British government, which even before the COVID, they were thinking about digital service as part of their parliament process, so that in future, as this process matures, we need to think about how we will learn a virtual parliament without having to sit in one location and observing the rules and the guidelines. I'm also happy that the standing orders also refer to the guidelines which will be formulated to look at issues of access by the public, public participation, to look at issues of conduct of proceedings, voting, division, and even ascertaining the votes. I think this is very important, Mr. Speaker, that whatever technology we adopt, it should not veer off the rules and the laws that guide the functioning of Parliament. But, Mr. Speaker, one important thing that is coming up is that choice of technology will be key. Because we have heard that hackers are hacking into these video conference facilities. The other day we had complaints that the Zoom technology that is being used for e-learning, at some point hackers hack into it and give very bad content, pornography and all that. So you can imagine in this parliament, we are sitting and then in the middle of the session, a pornography props up. That really will not be something good. So the choice of technology must take into account cybercrime concerns so that we are able to manage security aspects of that. And as some members said, that though we are in a crisis, COVID-19 crisis, it is also an opportunity for accelerated technology development. If you look at judiciary, they have adopted virtual court sessions. Parliament is now adopting virtual sessions. So if we can invest, and I'm happy now we are starting the budget process, we need to think about how do we enhance infrastructure for technology so that some of these things like e-learning, operation of government functions virtually, operation of parliament, and even court can go on smoothly. The current setup of things, it is not possible. For example, some members here come from very remote areas where there is no electricity, where there is no infrastructure. It will be very difficult. So for us members, as we engage on the issue of budget, let us also consider how to invest more in IT infrastructure. With those few remarks, I support.
Mutua Barasa Kimilili.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also rise to support this motion because, Honorable Speaker, Parliament is very important in discharging its duties, whether during pandemic or not, and that we must make everything possible, Honorable Speaker, that we continue to transact our business. But Honorable Speaker, even as we move towards this virtual technology, we also need to bring on board some of the problems that we saw when we were, doing this meeting, Honorable Speaker. What came out that nearly 90% of members who were participating online were participating from their cars and one from the farm. So these are some of the challenges, Honorable Speaker, and even the gracious lady, the great member of Parliament for Lamu, she was in some kind of a farm, and she had, from what she joked, that the sergeant at arm, a 6-year-old young man who kept on coming and going back. So these are things which will guide us going forward when we'll be developing the regulations on how we are going to go about this matter, Honorable Speaker. It is not difficult, it's very easy, because Parliamentary Service Commissioners pays offices for members of Parliament. They can as well even pay for gadgets in boardrooms, so that those gadgets are configured to ensure that we can make contributions from our constituency offices linked through the Hansard, and we can even go a notch higher, that the challenges of getting the speaker's eye when you are attending a session virtually, maybe if you have something very important, or rather, if you are an expert in the subject matter, you can write maybe to the speaker, even before the session begins, you can go through, then you know that a member for Ruaraka, for example, Honorable TJ Kajwang, had a very good write-up, then you can give him priority. So we can, it's possible, Honorable Speaker. There is no way this House can fail to transact business for whatever circumstances, Honorable Speaker. Because without Parliament, executive becomes rock. They begin to overturn the Constitution. Without this Parliament, Honorable Speaker, the executive cannot know what is in the mind of Kenyans. The aspirations and wishes of Kenyans are communicated to the executive through their representatives, Honorable Speaker. So this House is very important that no matter the circumstances, we are the last line of defense for the Kenyan people. We should be the last person, Honorable Speaker, to close doors for whatever circumstances, Honorable Speaker. Because the Constitution gives powers to Kenyans under which part of those powers, Honorable Speaker, are donated to us. So even as we move forward, we need to move forward with the speed, and I will encourage members, Honorable Speaker, that if you have very good suggestions, they can forward to the committee, so that when the committee is sitting down to deliberate on how to go about this matter, Honorable Speaker, we will have a pool of resources from members of Parliament to tap in. With these very few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
Dr. Makali Mulu.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Let me start by appreciating the work of the committee and say this, Honorable Speaker, a lot of things have been said by my colleagues in terms of this important area. And I think since we are in extraordinary times, Honorable Speaker, it is very important when you see these initiatives coming from this House. Honorable Speaker, I'm sure all of us are aware that you are the chair of the CPA Africa Executive Committee. And when we see this coming from the Kenyan National Assembly, it's going to work very well for us because you're providing that leadership. And I hope by passing this motion, we'll also be sending a very clear signal to the rest of the parliaments in Africa that it is doable. Point number 2, Honorable Speaker, I want to agree with those who are saying the issue of voting is not going to be an easy issue, Honorable Speaker. And I think the committee will have to take a lot of time to think through how voting will be conducted, Honorable Speaker. Because, when you have some people in a room and others are out there, Honorable Speaker, it is not going to be easy. But things like where to conduct these kind of meetings, to me that is easier done once we agree on the motion. Because it is clear that people will have to dress officially and will have to know the timings for the meetings so that people look for the right place to be so that there are no interruptions from other family members, as it has been said. So, Honorable Speaker, with those remarks, I want to urge my colleagues that we support this motion and then we move to the next level of implementation. And Honorable Speaker, I also want to prepare the country that by passing this motion also, it is calling for additional resources to the National Assembly so that we have the right environment to conduct such meetings. I support, Honorable Speaker.
Yeah. What's the point of order, Honorable Kimunya?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I want to raise, pursuant to Standing Order number 95, and listening to the accolades that have been showered on the committee and the concurrence in terms of why we need this and how it's timely, that perhaps even if we continue talking, we will not necessarily be saying anything different. And with those, would I be in order, Mr. Speaker, to move that the mover be called upon to reply?
Well, that appears to be the mood in the House. Let me put the question. That the mover be called upon to reply. Will as many as that opinion say aye? As many as contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Mover, Deputy Speaker.
Enough. Thank colleagues for supporting this particular motion, and to clarify that the chair of the committee is the Speaker himself. He only graciously donates his powers many times. So most of the work that we do in the committee is under his guidance as chair. So with those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I move.
Honourable members, I put the question, which is that this House adopts the fourth report of the Procedural House Rules Committee on amendments to the standing orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the House and its committees, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, May 6, 2020, and pursuant to provisions of Article 124, Clause 1 of the Constitution and Standing Order 265, 1, resolves to amend its standing orders as contained in the schedule to the report, and 2, orders that the amendments to the standing orders as contained in the schedule to the report shall come into effect on Monday, 18th May 2020. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. But Sergeant at Arms, I can see just this announcement. I can still see that some members who are going to the other holding room, if they come, there are several empty spaces. I can see some members who are coming and going to the launch. They can be told the space unless they want to consult further out there. Next order.
Order number 11, motion. Report of the Committee of the Whole House on the Equalization Fund Bill, National Assembly Bill number 43 of 2019. Question to be put.
Honourable members, what remains on this motion is for the question to be put, which I hereby do. That this House do agree with the report of the Committee of the Whole House on its consideration of the Equalization Fund Bill, National Assembly Bill number 43 of 2019, subject to recometo of Clause 7. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Will as many as contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next one.
Order number 12, Committee of the Whole House.
Thank you, honorable members. We are starting with the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020.
Clause 2.
I propose the question which is at clause 2 be part of the bill. And I put the question which is at clause 2 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of our contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 3.
I propose the question which is at clause 3 be part of the bill. Honorable Limo, you have an amendment to this one. Yes, what is it, Honorable Leader, majority?
Chair, I thought to make a communication this morning that clause 3 has been withdrawn. Yeah. The one in the morning.
That's a very good observation.
So,
Honorable Limo, is that is the position which you can confirm on record?
No, I have it. I have the... Yes, Honorable Chair, the position of the majority leader is that it was actually communicated in the morning that it was withdrawn. So that means our amendment also stands withdrawn.
Very good. So that one is withdrawn. Thank you, Leader Majority, for being very keen on that one. Next.
Clause 1.
I propose a question which is at clause 1 be part of the bill. And I put the question which is at clause 1 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of that contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Title.
I propose the question which is at the title be the title to the bill. And I put the question which is at the title be the title to the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of our contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. So let's have the mover to move reporting. Mover.
Honorable Chairperson, I beg to move that the committee do report to the House its consideration of the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020, and its approval thereof with amendments.
Very well. And I put the question which is that I put the question which is that the committee do report to the House its consideration of the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020, and its approval thereof with amendments. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of our contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. That marks the end to that particular one. So we go now to the Equalization Fund Bill, National Assembly Bill number 43 of 2019, which is a recommit. We are now dealing with a recommittal of clause 7.
Clause 7.
I propose the question which is at clause 7 be part of the bill. Honorable Limo, you have something to this one.
Yes, Honorable Chair, I beg to move that clause 7 be amended as per the order paper. What we are doing here, Chair, is that there was a recommendation. The bill was proposing that the chairperson will come from the marginalized community. However, we are recommitting and amending it so that the chairperson will come from any part of Kenya, regardless of where that person is coming from. And then the other one, Mr. Chair, is that under subsection B, we are also saying that because the number is even number, and therefore when there is a tie, it will be a problem. So we are amending so that the chairperson can take a vote in case of a tie. And finally, a further amendment. We had proposed to move
I want to be clear on this one.
Yes.
We are dealing with the amendment.
Yes.
So is there any further amendment?
Yes, there's a further amendment to change there is a proposal on a fine where there is when there is an offense, the fine was at 10,000. However, we had proposed to move it to 100,000, so that we introduce subsection C to take care of that enhanced fine to make it more reasonable for the board. Those are the only things which we are recommitting.
have to be very clear on that one, Honorable Limo, because the second one, which you are referring to as a further amendment, is actually what is already captured as B. Now, but you could be having something else.
Okay, it was not captured properly on the order paper. However, that was adopted in the House during the committee of the whole House.
Please go on record specifically on that one.
Yes.
So that when a question is put and is taken,
yes,
then it will be captured in the manner that you want.
All right.
So what is it that you want on that particular one? Is it the issue of the fine?
The issue of the fine, to move the fine from 10,000, which is in the bill, to 100,000 to make it more reasonable, because 10,000 is on a lower side. We need to make it 100,000 in case of an offense by the board members.
Okay.
Yes.
So is that in that particular subclause B or in another place?
It will be moved to subclause C, because subclause B will be taken over.
Introduction of a new.
Yes, subclause B will be taken over by the introduction of the chairperson to vote in case of a tie.
Yes. I hope that is clear.
All right.
And honorable members, as I now propose the question, it should be clear for members that the proposed amendment by Honorable Kasaid Kamket will not be considered if the amendment of the chairperson are just a minute.
Actually, Chair, maybe I bring to your attention that we did discuss with the Honorable Kamket, and he is in agreement with my amendment. Yes.
It's now clear. So I propose the question, which is that clause 7 be amended as proposed by Honorable Joseph Limo, the chairperson of the Finance Committee. And I'll give the first opportunity to Honorable Kamket if he's interested, because he had something on it. Honorable Kamket, you want to speak to this? We're having a problem with your microphone.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am in full agreement with the committee.
Perfect.
Chairperson, thank you.
That's okay. Did I see a member there? Is that Honorable Nyikal?
My order paper is different. There are all another raft of amendments actually under that, where you're asking the person designated by the principal secretary instead of the principal alone, and all the way down, and where we are adding D, there's a DA where we are adding the principal secretary for the term being responsible for matter relating to national treasury. Are these now not part of the amendments?
What is it, Honorable Leader of Majority?
Chair, we're only dealing with a committee.
Absolutely.
So I think you better...
Absolutely. I thought...
Provide information to...
That's what I wanted to... Honorable Nyikal, we are dealing with a recommittal, which is clause 7, and Honorable Limo has moved. So maybe lastly, the member for Kitui Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to really thank the Chair, Finance Committee, and also Honorable Kamket for agreeing to this amendment. Because the last time we were discussing this bill, Honorable Chair, we said this was unconstitutional. So I'm very happy when I see now that they have taken care of that interest, and I want to support it.
Lastly, Honorable Manzo. I haven't seen him in a long... Yes, Honorable Manzo, wherever you are.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to contribute on this very important one. Chair, I do support the moving of the fine from 10,000 to 100,000 because it makes it more serious and preventive. I thank you, Chair.
Lastly and very lastly, I've said it 3 times, Honorable Toom, Dr. Toom. Were you interested in contributing on this one?
No, COVID-19.
COVID-19?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we will wait for COVID-19. Now, so I put the question, which is that clause 7 be amended as proposed by Honorable Joseph Limo. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. And I put the question, which is that clause 7 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. So we go, let's have the... Let's have the mover to move reporting, please. Is that Honorable Limo? Oh, Honorable Kamket, sorry. Then who is it? Oh. Actually, Honorable Limo is the one who moved that amendment, but the bill is yours. So you are the mover.
Thank you. Honorable Chair, I beg to move that the House do report to the committee do report to the House its consideration of the Equalization Fund Bill, National Assembly Bill number 43 of 2019, and its approval thereof with amendments.
Very well. So I put the question, which is that the committee do report to the House its consideration for the Equalization Fund, National Assembly Bill number 43 of 2019, and its approval thereof with amendment. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I should start with the first one. The public finance, okay. So, Honorable Speaker, I thank you. I beg to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020, and its approval thereof with amendments.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. I also request Honorable Chair Finance, Honorable Limo, to second the motion for agreement with the report of the Committee of the Whole House.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I second.
Members, I propose the question that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. Honorable members, I then put the question that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. Will as many as of that opinion say aye?
Aye.
Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Mover.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020, be now read a third time. I also request the Chair of Finance to second. Honorable Limo.
Mr. Speaker, I second.
I propose the question that the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020, be now read a third time. I now put the question, which is that the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020, be now read a third time. Will as members of that opinion say aye? Will as members of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. The next one.
A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Public Finance Management Act 2012.
Brother. We'll now deal with the Equalization Fund Bill. Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Equalization Fund Bill, National Assembly Bill number 43 of 2019, and its approval thereof with amendments.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the House do agree with the committee in the said reports. I also request Honorable Limo, the Chair for Finance, to second the motion for agreement with the report on of the Committee of the Whole House.
The Honorable Limo.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby second.
I propose the question that the House